This installation video will cover the installation of the QBOT on the King Quilter II long arm sewing machine and the King Quilter frame. The first step in installing the Y-axis drive bracket is to remove the axle bolt on the front wheel. You may need a helper to support the sewing machine during this step. Remove the bolt and set it aside. Note that there is a small spacer that fits between the wheel and the sewing machine. You will need this spacer when attaching the drive bracket. Here are the components needed to reassemble the front wheel with the bracket. From left to right, we see the small wheel spacer, the wheel, a 1/4 inch wide aluminum spacer that came with the QBOT installation kit, and a 1 1/2 inch long 1/4-20 screw. Reinstall in this sequence and lightly tighten the screw. When installed correctly, it should look like this. Next, while supporting the weight of the sewing machine, remove the rear wheel bolt and set it aside. You will now use the same procedure to install the back side of the Y-axis drive bracket. Remember to have the small spacer between the sewing machine and the wheel. When installed correctly, the drive bracket will look like this when mounted to the sewing machine. Fully tighten the wheel screws now. Next, attach a drive assembly motor to the Y-axis bracket using a 2 inch long 1/4-20 screw, a 3/4 inch aluminum spacer, and nut as shown. Slide the screws through the drive assembly motor, then through the 3/4 inch spacer, then through the bracket, then attach the nut. Tighten securely. When assembled properly, it will look like this. Next, install the Y-axis drive wire brackets. Start by removing the screw on the front roll stop, shown here. Leave the original washer as shown. Gather the parts from your installation kit. This includes the front drive wire bracket, a 1 inch long 1/4-20 screw, and a 1/4 inch thick spacer. Place the screw through the bracket, then through the spacer and washer, and tighten securely to the frame as shown here. Using a 1 1/2 inch long 1/4-20 screw, repeat the same procedure for the rear Y-axis drive wire bracket. Next, attach the Y-axis drive wire by placing one end of the wire on the hook of the drive wire holder at the back of the machine. Then wrap the wire around the drive wheel twice, entering and exiting the drive wheel from the top of the wheel as shown. Next, attach the turnbuckle tensioner to the other end of the wire and finally place the other end of the tensioner on the drive wire holder hook as shown. Tension the drive wire by turning the barrel of the turnbuckle only, making sure that the wire does not twist. Twisting the drive wire will cause premature wear and lead to an early failure. The completed drive assembly will look like this when finished. Now we turn to installing the X-axis drive bracket. Starting at the rear of the carriage, remove the original screw from the wheel stop and replace it with a 1 1/2 inch long 1/4-20 screw as shown here. Remember to reuse the original washer. Tighten securely. Slide the X-axis drive bracket onto the screws as shown here and use 2 1/4-20 nuts from your kit to secure the bracket to the carriage. Next, attach the drive assembly motor to the bracket with 2 1 inch long 1/4-20 screws and 2 1/4-20 nuts. Tighten securely. For the next step, you will need the X-axis drive wire holders and 2 8mm by 25mm screws from the installation kit. Install the drive wire holders as shown here and here. Tighten the screws securely. Next, attach one end of the drive wire to the hook on the drive wire holder, and then wrap the drive wire twice around the drive wheel so the wire enters and exits from the top of the drive wheel as shown. Finally, attach the hook end of the turnbuckle to the other end of the drive wire and the loop end to the other drive wire holder as shown. Tension the drive wire by turning the barrel of the turnbuckle only. Now we are ready to attach the QBOT head to the back of the sewing machine. For this step, you will need 2 6mm by 25mm screws and 2 1/2 inch long aluminum spacers from the installation kit. The QBOT head mounts to the back of the sewing machine using the 2 holes shown here. Place the screws through the bracket, then through the spacers, and then screw into the back of the sewing machine. Tighten securely. When properly attached, it will look like this. If you have the King Quilter II Elite, then you are ready to attach the QBOT connector cord. To do this, first remove the handlebars from the sewing machine. Remove the 3 screws that hold the handlebars to the machine and set aside. You will need these screws to reattach the handlebars. Once the handlebars are removed, turn them over to expose the underneath and center circuit board. You will need to disconnect the right handlebar connector from the circuit board. The cable is black and has 3 small wires, black, yellow, and orange, connected to a small white connector. Be very careful when disconnecting this cable. Do not use excessive force or pull by the wires. Pull the connector out to the right. Do not pull up on the connector or wires, as this will damage the connector or circuit board. Once the plug is disconnected, plug it into the receptacle on the small circuit board at the end of the QBOT connector cord that came in the installation kit. It can plug in only one way. Next, plug in the white connector from the circuit board into the receptacle on the handlebar circuit board. Take your time during this step. Once aligned, the plug will slip into the receptacle. Make sure that the plug is installed, but you will not need to use excessive force to do so. Once the plug is attached, route the cable as shown and use a strain relief pad and wire tie to secure the wire underneath the handlebar assembly as shown here. Bundle the USB cable that connects the handlebar to the sewing machine and the QBOT connector cord together, and using a wire tie and strain relief pad, secure them to the front side of the sewing machine as shown. Next, after plugging in the QBOT connector cord into the top port of the QBOT head, gather the excess length of wire in a loop as shown and secure it to the side of the sewing machine using a strain relief pad and a wire tie as shown here. Leave enough excess cable so that it does not rub on the rear hand wheel. Now plug in the Y-axis wiring harness into the Y-axis drive assembly. Secure the cable to the drive bracket using a strain relief pad and wire tie as shown here. Next, secure the cable to the back of the machine with a wire tie here. Do the same with the X-axis wiring harness as shown here. Place a strain relief pad on the bracket and collect the excess cable after plugging in the X and Y wiring harness cables to the top of the QBOT head. The top of the QBOT head should look like this with all cables plugged in and the power supply plug attached. Add a strain relief pad to the back of the side housing here and collect any excess cables. Secure with a wire tie after moving the machine forward and backward to ensure it is not hindered by any cable. At this point, turn on the sewing machine and turn on the QBOT by flipping the power switch. Now, turn on your tablet and download and install the QBOT app from the Google Play Store or from the Amazon App Store. From your home screen on the Android device, choose Settings and then Bluetooth. Find your QBOT in the list and select it to pair to the QBOT head. The PIN is the last 4 digits of the QBOT serial number. Once the QBOT head is paired, make sure it is the only paired device on your tablet. Start the QBOT app and allow the QBOT app to save files. Next, press Design Management. On a fresh installation, this will unpack all of the designs. In the future, you do not need to go into Design Management first. Now let's connect to the QBOT head. Press Connect and follow the prompts. The first prompt asks you to select your QBOT from the list of devices. Select your QBOT and press OK. Once connected, let's check the settings to make sure they are correct. Press the yellow Settings button on the left-hand column of the home screen. The app then communicates with the QBOT head and gathers the settings stored there. The QBOT settings for this setup are shown here. The critical settings are Invert X 1, Invert Y 0, Motor Current 70, Acceleration Factor 1600, and Corner Factor 0.6. Please consult the instructional DVD that came with your QBOT for instructions on using your new QBOT. New video content is available on YouTube. Just search for QBOT V3. Also, please join the Yahoo group. The group name is QBOT Squad.